Hi, my name is Cass and welcome to my channel. So I actually filmed this video yesterday, but it turns out that I filmed it in slow motion with no audio. I have checked this like 10 different times, so there should be audio, but this also shouldn't be in slow motion. January is finally over and it took 512 years for it to end. The good news with the fact that it took so long, I was able to get to 13 books. So today we are going to go over the books that I read in January along with some February hopefuls that I'll be able to get to this month. I was honestly kind of surprised I was able to get to so many books in January because there was a period that I was in a slump and I could not get out of it. I was able to eventually, and honestly it was all because of Onyx Storm, which was shocking to you as it is to me. But I got through it. I was able to read one 5-star and then I read a couple other books that I liked as well. My average rating for the month was 3.9 stars. But I'm just hoping that means I'm trying to find what I'm looking for and I'm going to read so many good books throughout the year. So without further ado, let's get into this. Demon in White by Christopher Ruocchio. This is the third book in the Sun Eater series and I'm beginning to love this series. I actually stopped about 150 pages in just so I could go back and tab because I never tab books, but there were some quotes in here that I just needed to be able to go back and look at, knowing that they're probably going to impact this book and the rest of the series some way, somehow. I'm loving the way that these characters are finally getting, not even finally, they are just becoming more themselves and you're getting so much added depth that I didn't think was even possible for there still to be. And it's not even just Hadrian that's having this depth and these new revelations. It's Valka, it's Polino, you were meeting new characters like Prince Alexander, Eudax. All of these characters just have a well of depth to them that never seems to end, but that just makes it so much more interesting because you never know what's going to happen. You never know the full scope of these characters, and it gives the fact that this series is so long the chance to grow from them. It's not even just these characters that I absolutely loved in this book. I also really liked the plot and I really liked the fact that the pacing in this was incredible. It was very fast paced, but it wasn't too fast paced that you were trying to catch up and you weren't able to follow along. It was fast enough to constantly keep you intrigued, and even on the slower parts, it was never too slow that you were bored. It was just slow enough for you to be able to catch your breath before you have to continue on diving into some new political maneuver, some new battle sequence. There's so many of them that you were constantly on the edge of your seat, never quite knowing what's going to happen next, and I love that so much. Christopher Ruocchio is great when it comes to twists, but also great at holding your attention no matter how frequent you are honestly thrust into the unknown. Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This book is every single supervillain stereotype wrapped into one, and it just is so funny. I loved just the fact that Charlie absolutely knows nothing and he is the worst supervillain possible, but it also makes him so easy to connect to because if any of us were thrown into a random supervillain business because your dead uncle that you have not talked to in years decides to give it to you, you also wouldn't know what to do and you'd probably make a lot of jokes out of it as well. It has hyper intelligent super spy cats. You have talking dolphins that are currently in a labor dispute. You have an evil volcanic lair. And it's just so much fun. You have henchmen, you have issues with other supervillains wanting to be the supervillain you are. It was just incredible. I did not want to put this down. There was, as I said, so much humor. I was laughing out loud, kicking my feet at just some of the interactions these characters were having, but also just the way that the story was going. It was hysterical and it was so easygoing. The narrative was beautiful, such an easy, fast-paced novel, read it in one sitting, and I loved it. And it, even though I'm not really the biggest cat person, I kind of want a cat after this, but only if they are also super intelligent. Alone with You in the Ether by Olive Blake. I was not the biggest fan of this one, and I was actually really disappointed because I expected so much from this. But the best way for me to describe why I wasn't the biggest fan of it is the fact that I felt that a good majority of this book was just trying to make memorable quotes, and quotes do not make up an entire story. I also did not feel that the characters had the chemistry necessary for this storyline. Reagan and Aldo just didn't click, and I get that that's kind of part of the reason that this book works the way it does. But if you were going to have somebody basically giving up everything about themselves for another person, there needs to be chemistry. I think that Reagan and Mark had better chemistry, and it was just very difficult to not appreciate and accept, but just understand why Aldo would be willing to give up so much for somebody that obviously doesn't care for him and only cares for themselves. I think that there are going to be other people that do end up enjoying this book, because I have seen lots of people say that this was an incredible book, and when it comes to the writing itself, it is beautiful. It is some of the most beautiful lyrical writing I have ever read, but beautiful lyrical writing needs to have a story behind it for it to be intriguing to me. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is a book I think everybody needs to read. It follows Demon Copperhead, who grows up in a very, very small, poor area in southern Appalachia, and he is given the worst hand dealt possible. He has to deal with from such a young age death, grief, loneliness, addiction, trauma, assault, just one thing after another. He can never once catch a break, and Barbara Kingsolver makes you feel every single emotion that Demon is going through, and you can also feel that he is just trying to withdraw from himself and the world that he is forced to live in. It was heartbreaking, but it was also so beautiful. I really liked every single thing about this book. I listened to it on audio, and you could just feel the emotions that the narrator was giving you. It was great, and it was horrible, and I cried in multiple places. I hurt for Demon. I hurt for everybody that was involved. And the sad thing is this is the reality for so many people, and it's just heartbreaking to know that some people don't get to escape, and they are forced to live in these conditions and get dealt this horrible hand of cards. Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. I ended up liking this more than I was expecting, because the beginning of the book was very slow, and it was just learning about Kissin, Anara, Skeddycat, Elagass. Just all of their backgrounds was very slow, and I was very worried the way that this book was going to go, considering it's on the shorter side. But don't worry, before you were even a quarter of the way through, it begins to pick up. I was really intrigued by the interactions that there were with the gods, considering this is a time when you were supposed to hate gods. They got rid of gods because gods were evil, and gods still have such a profound impact on this world and on these characters. I really liked watching the bond and the friendship develop between every single person, from Kissin and Anara to even Kissin and Elagass. It was just incredible to see these people that were seemingly completely different be able to form bonds and friendship and trust while having to all undergo and trying to get to a common place. And it was just such an incredible world. I really liked how fast-paced it was once it began to pick up, and I'm just really intrigued to see how this ends up going because of the twist at the end. And I can't wait. I'm really excited just because of the fact that there's so many different possibilities and so many different ways this can go, because I knew I should have guessed that certain things were going to happen, and I didn't because I didn't think it was possible. But I really loved this. I loved the friendship. I loved the connection every character was beginning to develop. And I'm just hoping that they end up staying friends, but also I feel like it'd be kind of fun to see it all crumple and then have to come back together again. Ascendant by Michael R. Miller. This is the first book in the Songs of Chaos series, and I ended up loving this way more than I was expecting. Holt comes from a family of cooks, and he is a dishwasher, but he wants nothing more than to become a dragon rider. But one day he ends up stealing a dragon egg when he finds out that there are no weaknesses allowed in dragonkind, and he knew that that egg was going to be disposed of and the dragon inside killed. He ends up raising this dragon, forming this bond, and now left with only 2 other people to try and help defeat the scourge, the undead that are coming. He has to grow up way faster than intended and become a hero for everyone. I loved the innocence that was just written in these pages when it comes to Holt. And it's not even just innocence, it was also the fact that he was so naive, but he was just so young. Yes, this is YA, but I think this is YA done right. You can feel the growth that these characters are developing. I really like the fact that you are getting banter and wit with Talia and Brody, and everybody just wants the absolute best for all of these characters, but also you can feel that nobody trusts each other at the moment. I also think the magic system was definitely on the more intriguing side when it comes to dragons, just because of the fact that you actually had to work for your magic. It just wasn't automatically given to you, and I was definitely confused at first because I had never seen something like that, but once I actually took a step back and realized it wasn't as complicated as I was making it out to be, it was simple. These characters and this world is only just beginning, and I really cannot wait to see what Michael R. Miller does with the rest of this series, with the rest of these characters, because so far Ash and Holt have grown up so much over the course of one book, and this is just the first book. The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the first book in the spin-off trilogy after the Inheritance games, and this book for me was all vibes. There was nothing else more to it than vibes. I really did not think that there needed to be a continuation of the Inheritance Games trilogy, but because I loved it so much, I decided to pick it up. And I'm not glad that I picked it up. I rated this 4 stars because I had such a fun time being able to dive back into the puzzles and the mysteries that are constantly happening in these books. I just was disappointed because I wanted more of Grayson and I got more of Jameson, and I could care less about Jameson. I think if you thought the conclusion of the Inheritance games was good enough, don't bother picking this up. It was just perfect the way it ended, and for as much as I really did enjoy this, I rated it 4 stars. I love the world. I don't plan on continuing it just because I have such high expectations and I have a feeling that they will be met. Madhouse Promenade by Lynn Moore. For being a debut, I thought this was an excellent start, and I can only see good things happening from here. There were certain points of wisdom that I found just absolutely intriguing, certain quotes that I would let live rent-free in my head for the rest of my life. I definitely had issues with certain aspects of the pacing and certain aspects just of the story and the narrative, but overall, I think for being a debut, I can't complain. I know I wouldn't be able to write this. I just wish that for me personally that it was a little bit longer, because I definitely think the story could have been extrapolated and there were certain scenes that were just rushed trying to be able to fit in everything that was needed, when if it was just a little bit longer, you would have been able to feel a connection with certain characters more. You would have been allowing the depth of these characters to be reached, because I feel like we only got surface level in different aspects because it was short and we weren't able to go and explore them. I'm really excited to see what ends up happening next with Lynn Moore and what he ends up putting out, just because I feel like this is such a strong start that it can only go up from here. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. This book was the perfect cozy fantasy. Travis Baldree does cozy fantasies unlike so many others. I love everything about these worlds that he creates. I realize when it comes to a cozy fantasy, it is a cozy fantasy and then there's a little bit of conflict, but that is not the main source of the book and the plot. But he does it so well, and I love that in these books and in his stories, you are getting so many different magical, mythical creatures and characters, and they all interact with each other just like normal, everyday humans, and that's what just makes it so exciting. I also really like just how happy and mythical and magical his writing and these worlds feel, because I feel joyous and I want to go and dive in and live in them as well. I loved seeing this new adventure for Viv just because we met her once in Legends and Lattes, but now we're getting even more of a backstory. She is an orc that is now injured after dealing with a necromancer, and she's stuck in this sleepy little beach town in Merc. And everything that shouldn't happen obviously does happen. It was just so fun to watch friendships develop, relationships develop, and just see a different side of Viv that I thought I already knew everything about her. I liked being able to see little tidbits and breadcrumbs from Legends and Latte sprinkled into this book as well. The Pact by Jodi Picoult. This book was beautiful and heartbreaking in all the best and the worst ways absolutely possible. This story follows along the Golds and the Hearts, Emily and Chris, as they are two 17-year-olds seemingly in love, as one night they decide to commit an atrocious act. Their parents get a phone call in the middle of the night saying that they are in the hospital, and when they arrive, only one of them has survived after making a suicide pact that has gone wrong. It was heartbreaking to the point where even I was questioning my own morals in regards to who you believe, what is happening, and how much do you actually know a person. Just getting the chance to see Emily and Chris as they grow up, you are getting the perspectives of them, you're getting their parents, and just watching as the story slowly begins to form and the puzzle is finally getting bigger and bigger and the picture is coming together, you realize just how little you actually know. I could not believe that there was so much that was happening in this story, and I also could not believe just the way I was feeling, and to know that you really don't always know everything about a person, no matter if they say that they tell you everything. Spectacular by Stephanie Garber is the holiday novella set in the world of Caraval, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I was so glad to be able to dive back into this world because Stephanie Garber is magical. Absolutely magical when it comes to writing. You can basically smell the gumdrops in the air when you're reading her work. I was so glad and so excited to see these characters again, just because I was so sad to have left them behind at the end in finale. The artwork in this is incredible. Just absolutely stunning. It was such a quick and easy read, but I will say I was honestly disappointed in it. It didn't feel necessary, and I realized it was a novella and it was an addition to the story, but I feel like it really took away from certain characters and all the growth that they had, and it felt like they reverted back to their original, just very selfish intentions. And I was sad about that because Tella had grown so much, and just to see her become that child again was really disheartening and disappointing. But it's beautiful. If you're here for the pictures, stay for the pictures because they are worth it. 110%. Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in the Imperium series and one of my most highly anticipated books of the year. And when I say I was pleasantly surprised, I am not lying by that. I was not the biggest fan of Iron Flame. I just feel like it didn't add anything to the story, and a couple revisions probably would have benefited it. But Onyx Storm, way better. Far exceeded my expectations. I liked the fact that we were finally able to dive into the world, into the politics, and we actually got character depth and arcs that I was not expecting. I was so intrigued and so interested in this world that we are finally beginning to truly explore, because there was so much about it that we knew nothing about, and finally we get the chance to see just how wide, vast, and how little we actually know. And when it comes to politics, I loved the fact that we really knew nothing, but we finally got to explore just how rocky this entire situation actually was. And you didn't realize before in the first two books how much this foundation that we were lacking really was able to make up and elevate the story. Though I really did enjoy this and I gave it 4 stars, there were some critiques that I had. I was not the biggest fan of the ending. I felt like it was very lazy when it comes to writing, and instead of giving everything we could have possibly not even asked for but deserved, it just felt like it was an escape, and I wasn't happy with that. My Friends by Frederick Bachman. Not only was this my first book of the year, but it's also been my only 5 stars so far. I loved it with every single part of my being. It was amazing. Thank you so much to NetGalley and to Atria for an advanced reader copy of this. When I tell you this is probably Frederick Bachman's best work, it really is. He knows how to pull every single emotion out of you and put it into words in ways that you didn't think was possible. You didn't realize that he was inside of your head, but he is. For the last probably 30 pages, I was sobbing, which is not unexpected when it comes to Frederick Bachman. I just know that I'm going to, but I just loved watching all these characters. I really liked watching the plot. I loved watching just how much had changed and how you can be impacted by someone seemingly so little and minute in your life, and they are going to be such a big part of your story later on. It was just such an incredible book, and when it comes out in June, Everybody needs to read it. It is going to be the best book you've read all year long. Now let's get into the books that I'm reading in February. Known of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is the third book in the Locked Tomb series and is the last one that has already been released. Electa, which is the fourth book, comes out this year. I'm so excited because when it comes to a non-linear narrative and a story that you are so confused that you're not sure if you've ever actually read anything before by this author in this series in this world, it's perfect. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I love the confusion and I love how you were learning about so many characters in ways that you weren't expecting, but you also grow to love and adore them. And I just have a feeling when it comes to this book, that's exactly what's going to happen, and I cannot wait to get into this one. Kindred by Octavia Butler. This book is over 40 years old and is one that has withstood the tests of time when it comes to a book that is going to have a profound impact on your life. This book follows along Dana, who is a Black woman that lives in modern day California, who gets transported to Southern Maryland in the antebellum South. This is just an incredible story. I've already started it and I'm loving it. It is just heartbreaking and I don't even truly have words for it. It is just absolutely incredible. I just love this book so much and I'm only about 50% of the way through with it, and I have a feeling that it is going to shatter me into a million pieces by the end. Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I keep saying that I'm going to read it, but I'm actually going to read it this month. This book is the second book in the Villains trilogy that I only thought was a duology. I'm really excited to get back to Victor and Eli because they are the most perfect characters ever. I love the way the V.E. Schwab writes, but I also just like the fact that Victor and Eli, and then you have Sydney and Mitch and all these other characters just feed off of one another, and I know that when we are introduced to new characters, it is going to create such a beautiful but also just rocky and chaotic relationship between everybody that is going to have me on the edge of my seat. The Last Murder at the End of the World. This book is written by Stuart Thurton, who also wrote The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is one of my favorite books. I just absolutely love his writing style, and I know that this book is probably going to be incredible. Kingdom of Death by Christopher Rocchio. I know that this book is going to destroy me because I've heard that this book actually mentally, physically, emotionally destroys you. It's also supposedly the best book in the entire series, and considering these books have just gotten better and better, I cannot wait for it. I have no idea what's going to happen next because I'm pretty sure if I read the back of this book, it would still end up giving me some hard left turn and I would be lost and enjoying every single thing about it. This is going to be chaotic and I'm just in love with Hadrian and these characters, and it's going to be a wild, wild ride. Unbound and Defiant, which are the second and third books in the Songs of Chaos series. I really can't wait after reading Ascendant and loving it just to continue onto this world. These books are getting thicker and thicker, so that just means that it's going to be getting better and better. The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern. This is a second chance romance that takes place in between two interwoven time periods, one in the 1920s and one in the 1980s. I know pretty much nothing else about it, but I'm really hoping that this lives up to the high expectations that I have in my head. The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. I am a Matt Haig stan through and through. I have loved every single thing that he has ever written. The Midnight Library is one of my favorite books of all time, and I just can't wait to see what he writes next. I purposely don't know what this story is about just because I feel like when it comes to his writing, it's better to not know and to just be able to experience the words and his work. The Reformatory by Tanana Rive Do. Thank you so much to Saga Press for sending me this completed copy. I cannot wait. I have been seeing amazing raving reviews about this book from my mutuals, from people that I trust when it comes to book reviews, and I just cannot wait to dive into this. I know that I'm going to need to have tissues ready. It is just so exciting, and I also know that it is going to be so heartbreaking. Watermoon by Samantha Soto Yambo. I really am so excited for this one. It follows along a young woman who inherits a pawn shop where you sell your regrets. Her father is missing, and in comes a charming young man, and they decide to take this magical journey to find her father. It has been told that it is very similar to a Studio Ghibli film, which I adore with every single part of my being. So I'm really excited to get into this one. Thank you for Del Rey for not only sending me this incredible copy, because look how beautiful this naked dust jacket is. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. I know nothing about this book, but I do know that it is my book club's pick of the month. So if you would like to follow along, we are What's Your Fantasy over on Fable. You can definitely check us out and join us as we read this book. I'm really excited to read this. I know absolutely, as I said, nothing about it, but when it comes to Brandon Sanderson, I trust him with every part of my being to write a fantastic book, because his writing is amazing, the stories are amazing, and also his magic systems are just utterly beautiful. The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wasteland. I, once again, know nothing about this book. However, the reason I picked this one up is it's been sitting on my shelf for a very long time, staring at me with these beautiful sprayed edges. So I'm picking it up to read it just because I need to know what's so beautiful as on the outside as on the inside. The favorites. Every single review I have seen about this book has been spectacular. This follows along a set of figure skaters who get to the Olympics, and when they get there, they end up having this incident that destroys their partnership. 10 years later, a tell-all documentary comes out, and now they have to break their silence if anybody wants to know what really happened. I cannot wait to get to this. I love figure skating and I love drama, so honestly, it's the perfect combination. And then also this Goldsboro edition, once again, has the most beautiful sprayed edges that you could possibly see. And then look at the end papers. Also just glitter and sparkles. I'll have to get back to you at the end of the month if I actually read all of these books. I will let you know then. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again next week.